Okay. And
Hey,
we are live. Good evening, good evening, good evening, South Euclid. So excited that you have come back for another segment in our Echo series. If you're joining us for the first time tonight, Echo is an opportunity for us to kind of go back and echo the thoughts that we've been having through our current sermon series. We have been moving through a sermon series entitled Juggle the Struggle, Thriving in the Age of Anxiety. And we have been kind of preaching through this, and each segment of our Echo series has really helped us to process more of what it means not only to struggle with anxiety, we've also talked about depression and other mental illness, but has really been an opportunity for us to dive into these discussions more deeply. And so we are super excited that you would come back and that you would share with us tonight and be with us. So we would ask if you're watching, like, click, share, subscribe, tell everybody you know about this conversation we're getting ready to have tonight. In particular, our focus will be around the mental health of men and boys. If you're just joining us, if this is your first experience, let me give you a quick history lesson in what has brought us to this place and to this point. We began with segment 1 of Echo talking about counseling and the church. The church historically, and the Black church in particular, has been historically very resistant to counseling, particularly counseling that's not offered by a pastor. But while most pastors are great preachers and we do take pastoral care classes, it is not our primary lane of expertise, though there are pastors for whom that is the case. So took a look at that. And then we jumped into, that was with my guest, Reverend Raquel Gill. Then we had our own staff counselor here, Reverend Gina Moore, as we talked more about depression in particular and the Bible, and looked at areas where depression is. It was very important because many in the faith community understand the concept of joy, but not many have wrestled with that in conversation with depression, which some of the greatest leaders of the Bible wrestled with just that. Then we came in on week 3 with Archie Green, our own family here, and we are super, super excited. He shared with us really as someone who is actively in this, actively struggles with anxiety, actively struggles with depression, and is also a person of faith. And so how did he come to that, the realization of that, and the navigation of that? So we wanted to give you real life praxis. And then last week, we had my own counselor, Dr. Josephine Ridley, with us. I proved that I really do see someone and have been seeing someone for the last 8 or 9 years. And Dr. Ridley talked with us a lot about anxiety in general. We understood it's a broad topic, it's difficult, and these conversations are. We understand no one is just kind of a monolith to this, but that through conversation, through dialogue, we have an opportunity to further that. So tonight, I'm super excited to have with me none other than Eric King. Eric is thebomb.com. He is doing this work on a regular and consistent basis. I met him. Come on here. He a friend of a friend of a friend. Amen. And so we're just so thankful that he would come on tonight. He has a deep passion for men, for boys, for counseling, for therapy, for helping. And it's so interesting because somebody wrote on here earlier today, Eric King is one of my former students from Bedford High School. Super young man and very proud of all of his accomplishments. So we are rooting you on. Eric, welcome to South Euclid United Church of Christ. We're super excited to have you here with us tonight on Echo.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Let me, can I give a shout out to my
Absolutely.
kids, my wife, my precious wife, Joy, and back to my church, Mount Zion of Oakwood, Macon family. So I just wanted to just give shout outs, and also to our common friend, Miss Tamala, for inviting me or thinking about me. So that's what I call her. So
amen. Okay.
So thank you. No, I'm really thankful and grateful and blessed to be here to talk about this fun topic. I mean, this is an amazing topic.
Thank you. We're really excited. We're going to jump in. There's lots to talk about. But before we do, we got to do the disclaimer. You should always consult your doctor, consult your therapist, consult your physician. on these matters. This is simply provided to you for edification of one another, and we just hope that it brings value to you and the work that you are doing. And we just are very, very thankful for the opportunity to do this work tonight. So I've been starting off, Eric, with the exact same question to every person who has come and joined with us, because I think it's very interesting that I think counseling is becoming more commonplace. Not completely, but more commonplace, and certainly in communities of color. And so it's always important to me to kind of start off with the foundation of, Eric, what did you know about counseling growing up? Did you know about it? Did know about it? You fell into this, and kind of how did you end up here? Talk to us.
Yeah, it was in my family, it was non-existent. And I have to be perfectly candid. I grew up in a single parent household. I had, family members that were struggling, but I can't remember ever talking about it in a negative way or a positive way, to be perfectly honest with you. And as I grew up, I didn't think much about it. Once I got into the field, I actually started working in the field in 2006. I believe that's correct. When I graduated, but initially I started off as a computer science major.
Wow.
Yeah, my mom was one of the first Black female programmers, and that's what I thought I did and wanted to do. And I went to Akron, and I failed terribly for 4 good years. I failed terribly, and it was just at a point I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life after I failed out of Akron. And it was a choice. Do I want to go be an educator, or do I want to work in mental health? And just after a while of reading a lot of stuff and just being honest with myself, and even the depression I was going through on my own, I gravitated towards mental health. And so I've been here ever since. And that's how I met a lot of extraordinary people, extraordinary mentors. And that's even how I met Tam. So I think this is one of the most vital things. Mental health is just like anything else, or healthy mental health is just like anything else. It's vital, just like air, water, spirituality, food, all that. We have to have an extraordinary vessel in order to stand up to the extraordinary things that we have in this world to deal with.
Yeah. Wow. Amen. So I want to start by asking you, and again, we understand, and I think particularly because we've been doing these last couple weeks, like these are complex issues. So there's no like neatly checked boxes. But in particular, when you look at the current climate of our nation, everything we're facing, from COVID, Black Lives Matter, political campaign, potential economic collapse, talk to me about, in general, where are you seeing the basic mental health of men in this season? Like the men who come to you, what are you, or the men who don't come to you, but what are you seeing on a baseline for most men in this season?
So on a baseline in this season, a lot of anxiety, about what does it look like for tomorrow, a lot of anxiety about how do I deal with tomorrow, anxiety about family, anxiety about friends, anxiety about ownership of life, as well as how am I, or how can I turn into a positive vessel for anyone that is connected to me. A lot of sexuality, a lot of understanding of self, even a lot of understanding of this thing called emotion, because men are taught since as early as the age of 3 that once you get past a certain age, such as 3, you're not allowed to emote. And so there's only there's only one emotion that you're allowed to show, and that's anger. And it's only, 2 places that you can show that anger. That's at home or within your community. Other than that, you go outside your community, go too far away from your home, anger can get you killed.
Wow.
And so the one emotion that men are allowed to show, and that's men and boys are allowed to show, we're seeing are getting us killed. Wow. But to be perfectly candid, it got us killed before this moment.
No doubt.
It got us killed in the 90s. Any of the early 90s movies, if you're talking about John Singleton, you talk about any of the extraordinary Black movies of the early days, Boys in the Hood, any of that, all that is about anger, and all that is about how to deal with emotions. Yeah. And as I said, since the age of 3, as early as the age of 3. We're taught to buck up, to boys don't cry, or push down emotions. And what I'm finding is a lot of individuals, either during COVID or prior to COVID, they came in because of panic attacks. And as we began to dig and dig, it's not panic attacks that they're having, like genuine panic attacks. It's literally they're having a cathartic moment by which something happens, and all these emotions are coming out, and the only thing that society is telling you that you're dealing with is panic, when in
Wow.
reality you're literally dealing with natural emotions. And we need to talk about the idea of emotions and boil it down and say there's no such thing as a bad emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Emotion, there's not a good emotion or a bad emotion. It's just emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to work on how we present those emotions to the world. And how we present those emotions quite frequently can be viewed as good or bad. But those emotions that you have are never bad or good. They're just there. They're natural. Their skin color, their hair color, their eye color. And you just have to learn how to manage them.
That's good. So because I do want to talk about men and boys tonight. Let's start with boys, because then we can just kind of go into men. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with that 3-year-old piece, right? Currently, I in an incident that happened with my son, for example, a couple of years ago, I ended up doing some research, and a study from Yale shared that the suspension rate of kindergartners of Black kindergartners matches the incarceration rate of Black men. It was a frightening correlation between the two. We are beginning as a society, we know this because we learned this last week with Dr. Ridley, that though we are born with temperaments, but pretty much blank slates, right? That life continues to mold and shape us. In this current climate, what are we seeing in boys? Those of us who have sons, being pulled from school. Boys already are not super talkative in general. And now they're isolated, they're home, they're behind screens, video games, more and more electronics are becoming their companions.
Right.
Talk to us about first, just what are we seeing in boys?
Yeah, let me just affirm that whole idea of social learning theory. I mean, that's how I approach counseling, that we are the sum total of our experiences. We're born, our DNA, provides us with skin color, height, weight, all that other good stuff, and that is already predictive, unless something drastic happens. And then we are born with that birth temperament, and that birth temperament is a small portion of our personality. And so what happens is that we are the sum total. And what we're seeing now in this COVID age, and also before, we're seeing that the boys' ability to connect with other individuals were already shrinking. We're already low. The ability to emote with other boys or other young men or other girls or women. But now what we're seeing with COVID is that it's even getting more and more isolated. And if they're not a part of a household who has the ability to articulate and communicate, not just emotions, but just anything that they're doing. So, hey, you playing that game? Hey, tell me about that game. Why do you like that game? Not even anything that has to do with emotions, but just have the ability to learn how to speak to one another. And what's so interesting about it, you see all these individuals protesting about sending, kids back to school. But what they're not actually saying is that the reason why we're protesting is socialization is important to all beings. And so when we go to school, there's only two reasons why that I've learned through my education and even my professors. There's only two reasons why we go to school. One, for formal education, and two, for socialization.
Yeah.
And in this COVID area, they're doing, those that have the ability to disseminate and get the education, they're providing that. But what they're not providing is that socialization piece. And we may not know the impact of this 6 months?
Yeah.
This 6 months isolation, what it's doing to the individual's ability to socialize, to work through their emotions, to talk through their emotions. if they're not getting that in their household.
Yeah.
And I know in our household, my son, he really dislikes the journal. I mean, when I say he disliked the journal. And my wife and we spoke about it, and we said we explained to him, we need for you to learn how to emote. And
That's
even
good.
more during this pandemic of this isolation, we as parents, as aunties, as grandmas, as cousins in them, we have to use words and socialize because we just are not doing that well right now.
Yeah.
And that socialization piece that is so crucial that
Mm-hmm.
people are fighting for are so needed in our community and in our homes right now with our boys. And we just practice
Yeah.
because we just got to keep talking.
Yeah.
Just keep talking.
Your son is how old?
Let's see. The son that I'm referencing, he's 11.
Okay. And you have another son?
I have an older son who's 21.
Okay.
And I have a daughter who's 8. Yes. And
8. Okay. I was like, oh,
if she's watching me, she's gonna get on me.
It's all good. So you kind of hit on the head on the nail a little bit. So one of the things you're encouraging is journaling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will say I hate journaling. My therapist always like journal. But when I do it, it does get that kind of stream of consciousness out, no judgment, right? But talk to us about how. And I want to say this too, because you said, raised in a single parent home.
Yeah.
How do we talk to our boys?
Yeah.
In this.
I think one of the things and usually when I have parents and I speak about this, you talk to your boys the same way you talk to your girls.
Okay.
So in other words, you pretty much normalize the ability to communicate. You do not provide a separation of that gender specific, because we need to make sure that we talk, because if we're talking, frequently to our young ladies, what is the message that we're providing to our men or our young men if we're not talking to them? Are we teaching them that it's important not to talk? Are we teaching them that it's important not to express your emotions? Are we teaching them that an individual that overtalk is more girly? So the way that we want to do with our young men is to talk, because they're talking. Let's be candid. They're talking.
Yeah.
They're talking in nonverbal ways.
That's right.
They're talking in texting. They're doing TikTok. They're doing videos. They're doing social media. So they're talking. What we want to normalize is the ability to talk face to face, one-to-one, on the phone. So you want to normalize the idea of communication, verbal communication. Nonverbal, they're doing that, trust me, all day long.
Yeah.
But verbal, words, articulation, sentences, understanding, adjectives. We do this all the time, and I'll be like, yo, you're gonna have to give me descriptive words. Stop pointing, stop being over there. Use descriptive words and tell me exactly what you're saying and how you want me to understand you.
Okay. So to the parent who's watching, who, or even I think in particular about a particular family, I know grandmother who's watching, she's raising her grandson. He is, let's just go with 11 and up. That talking has not been normalized. And that it's weird. It's weird for the kid. It's weird for the parent or grandparent, whatever it is. How do you suggest we just ease our way into being a safe zone for communication that is normalized?
Yeah, so that generational piece is very interesting. The younger generation, they have goo gobs, and I use that word, goo gobs of way of communicating. They have text, and then the older generation, they may not, if it's a young grandmother, they may not have had that. If it's an older grandmother, they definitely didn't have that. So the idea is, when I'm working with a grandparent that's raising a younger child, I try to figure out where the middle. Okay. Are we talking about, can we get back to the point of eating at the table?
Come on, man. Come on.
If we're eating at the table, let's keep it that simple. Let's just throw out something. Hey, how were you brave today? Oh, okay. And just listen and just let it go. Just, if it's something that is inappropriate, you don't stop them from talking about it. You literally say, hey, why don't we change this around a little bit to where it makes sense? Okay, I get that you said that, but let's meet in the middle on this language thing. All right, so no cursing and no disrespectful language. All right, boom, we got it. Cool. All right, so if that's the case, How are you
That's good.
brave? And can we talk about it on an even level? So that's one, starting at the dinner table.
Good.
Let's say you don't have that. Turn off the radio while you're driving from place to
That's
place
good.
and just talk and just throw out something like, oh, look at that. Let's play What Do I See or What Do You See? Just
Good.
turn off the radio. Now
Yeah.
let's say you at home and let's say it's a distance. Send, older generation, send a verbal message. If you
Mhm.
got, two iPhones, just like, hey, I just wanted to tell you I love you and
Yeah.
this and that. And just send that, via text.
Yeah.
So the idea, and I guess what I'm really trying to say is meet in the middle, right? Don't
That's good.
grandparent or parent, don't go down to the kids level, right?
Good.
You don't have to get a TikTok and act silly. You can
Yeah.
if that's your shape, if that's your personality, that's cool. Do that. Or if that's the case, don't expect them to come up to you.
That's good.
Be cool with it.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to allow. Don't expect them to come up because they're not you, but meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Be okay with being in the middle and be okay with allowing yourself to be vulnerable, grandparent, and then
That's
that
good.
will allow the child to be vulnerable as well.
Good. 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 And so part of this is like just start, just try,
Yeah,
just
that's it.
try.
That's it.
Plant the seed, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
in due time. Good. So tell me, you know, what are you? How is anxiety or depression
Mm-hmm.
typically
Mm-hmm.
manifested in boys? And I know that's a wide range. You could talk a little bit
Okay.
about maybe younger kids and then older.
Okay.
What are like the things we should look for? Is it that anger? Is it, I don't know.
Right. So when we're looking at it for boys, you do want to look. You do want to look for anger. You do want to look inability to sleep. A lot of
Okay.
fidgetiness. You want to. And the sad part about it is what I'm actually asking parents to do is literally pay attention to their child. If you notice that there is something different that they're doing in the way that they're communicating or working,
Mm-hmm.
bring that to their attention and be okay with talking about it. So you want to look for anger. Eating habit, changes. Sleeping
Mm,
habit changing. Dressing changes.
okay.
Hairstyles. A lot of times with anxiety, and you did say anxiety, right? Just so
Yes.
I'm making sure.
Yes. No, you're
Okay.
right. Yep.
A lot of times with anxiety, watch body movements. Watch, just what I'm literally saying is pay attention to them in a
Mhm.
way that is helpful. Say, you know what? I noticed this. I notice every time we're talking, you seem a little jittery. What's going on?
Mm,
What's going on? Come in close. Look
mm,
at their eyes. Um, Understand, like, okay, you're being angry about this. Why are you being
mhm.
angry about this? What's going on? I noticed this. Or sometimes, let's be perfectly candid. Let it go
Yeah.
and then come back to it in about 20 to 30 minutes or an hour
Mm,
or the next day and just say, hey, I noticed this. What's up
okay.
with that?
Okay. Okay. Those are good. So as we move, I know that studies have shown, particularly as boys move into young adulthood,
Hmm.
is really where mental health crises that were not definitely apparent at a young age
Yeah.
begin to manifest and unfold. We're
Yeah.
getting out in the real world now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do this the best I can in an hour, right? To deal with the whole
Yeah.
all
No, I get you.
but so now as we start to look at young adult men,
Mhm.
let's just do 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
What are we looking at with this?
So what we're looking at with this is the question is, how did you learn how to be an adult?
Mm,
What were your examples? What do you remember about what you were taught? What do you remember what you were taught about love? What do you remember what you were taught about your bodies?
yeah.
Let's be perfectly candid. They get out, whether they're going to college or they just out, they about to explore their
Yeah.
sexuality, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and when I'm working with somebody, I make it plain. I use the actual terms. What term
Mm,
did you use for your body growing up? What
that's
term
good.
did you use for that? And so a lot of times, I when working with young adults such as 21, between the ages of 18 and 25, I asked them, what is your vernacular as it relates to your personhood?
That's good.
What were men like growing up? What did you hear about men that you didn't like?
Come on.
Let me be perfectly candid. Growing up, I grew up around all women. I paid attention to what the women said about men. And to be perfectly candid, I used that for my benefit when I went away to college. When I went away and connected with women, I used that for my benefit. And so looking at it from that standpoint, I have to ask someone, what do you know about men? What were you taught about men? What toxicities do you have about the malehood? What about the machismo? What is it, do you emote? Do you connect with it? Your partner, do you ever talk about anything other than sports? So when I'm working with young men, it's pretty similar. I need to understand exactly what they know about themselves in order so we can grow in our sessions around what they know. And let's take out a couple of things that may not be helpful, may not be rewarding to your mental, emotional, spiritual, economic health, all that. Because by that time, in between the ages of 19 and 25, you own your own money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we gotta talk about, do you view money as a young man as a pacifier, or do you view it as a blanket? Right? Because money is literally supposed to be looked at as a tool, like a screwdriver, like a hammer. But far too often what we learn is our masculinity is directly connected to the amount of money that we make.
Right.
And so we have to dispel that. Are you looking at money as a way of your image? Are you looking at money as a pacifier? Are you looking at it as a tool of manipulation to, keep somebody down, or to get this specific type of significant other in order to, view that significant other in this way? Yeah. So a lot of times between that ages of 18 and 25, we literally talking about, who are you and what did you turn into, and what contributed to your development of self.
Wow, that's good. That's good. And so as we move into even more manhood and growth, right? So like now you're talking to men starting to get to the stride of life, commit the theoretically committed partnership,
right?
Thinking more about their future. One of the things I've noticed is men seemingly are more resistant to the notion of counseling, therapy, and help. Women are too.
Right.
But as my husband goes to counseling, I all the time, you need to go to counseling. Then I just stopped, ladies. I just stopped asking him about it. And I literally just said to the Lord, I just prayed about it. And just, and one day he said, oh, I made an appointment with a counselor. And it was like the windows of heaven had opened up. And he was saying even today, like, he's in such a different place, and he can look back now and see, wow, I really needed to go and I really needed to get that help. But why is it seen potentially maybe is it seen as a weakness?
Yes.
Okay, talk to us.
I mean, let's be honest. After the age of 3, we're not taught the simple practice of accepting your emotion. We tolerate emotions, but we don't accept emotions. And then as we grow up, we have to, in order to connect with an individual intimately, and a lot of times we're taught physical intimacy, and we thinking that's sex, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But we're not taught about emotional intimacy. We're not talking about physical intimacy that has nothing to do about sex. We're not even talking about mental intimacy. And so a lot of times the resistance literally goes back to, this is foreign and I'm not going to like this. And remember, as human beings, we only go towards things that are comfortable. Yeah. If we're asked to go to something uncomfortable, we don't want that. Let's be real about it. Now, the other part about that is, we have never, ever learned anything comfortably. Yeah. And so as we go through counseling, and we begin to emote, and we begin to talk, and we begin to, the way that I approach the way I approach counseling, my job is not to be your friend. Amen. My job is to be a mirror. Amen. I reflect back to you what you give me, whether or not you like it. And if you don't like it, cool. That's cool. Yeah. But I'm not here to be your friend. And when you start doing that with men, That's when, in the street, that's when you punch somebody in the mouth.
Come on.
That's when you get violent. That's when you go to the way that you were taught to deal with your emotions. You were taught to deal with somebody that was approaching you. The way that you were taught to deal when you had that thing that's making you uncomfortable on the inside, you fight. But when you get here and you're here with me,
come on.
I'm fortunate enough to be both an anomaly and a blessing all at the same time. Because there's not a lot of black men. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of black men that are in counseling. And I'm fortunate enough to have, as a part of my organization, a black male, and hopefully, I mentor him in a way that he wants to be mentored. But I also have, 2 other black females, and I mentor them in a way of approaching counseling from a mirror, not from friendship, not from being this, not from being that. And so when we're working with men, and when we're working with older men, the very first thing you got to do is just realize you got to come from that level. Look, man, I get how you are, and I get how you've grown up. But let's understand this. This is not about like or dislike. I'm here for you, and I'm here to listen to you. And what's interesting, what I find with men and working with men, is that the moment that they have that pushback that I give them, right, that natural pushback that happen out on the street, and I'm candid, and I'm straightforward. And I asked them, what are you feeling right now? What is it that you want to do? And they will say, you know what? I want to get up and leave, or I want to hit you, or I want to do that. I said, all right, let's go with that. Where do you think you learned how to deal with that? Whatever that came in that I did, where do you learn that from? Oh, that's how, because you can't be a punk. You can't be vulnerable. You can't be none of that. And so when I'm working with men and I'm approaching counseling with men, I ask them to be vulnerable. I ask them to be okay. And it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay. Hopefully you don't tell my office. We're not going to get physical.
Right.
But you can feel every piece of anger that you have, because that's yours and that's reality. And there's no good or bad emotions. It's just good and bad ways of handling those emotions. And so when they have that anger in session, I say, okay, let's turn this around into a better way of expressing that. And that's when we use articulation. That's when we use words. That's when we began to use actual, I bring out a sheet of emotions. What emotion you feeling right now? And we talk about it.
Wow. So you and I, kind of in our preparation for this, talked a little bit about a current case. Again, we don't know. We're not in anybody's mind. We're not in anybody's mind. We're not in anybody's doctor's office. But this past Sunday here in Cleveland, there was a tragic case of a murder-suicide of a gentleman who as they said, just was struggling with depression. And I know it's not anxiety, but struggling with depression, had lost his job, and was just kind of snapped, right? Again, we're not in his mind, and we don't know. One of the questions I want to ask is, he had reached out to his father, like sent this email, like send this wellness check. Those of us who love men and see them sliding downward, how do we help them, Eric? And I know that's a deep question. But how do we help people that we see? I say, like my husband, like, hey, I see you. How do we do that? And especially if we either from, I think it's important if you could answer it this way, from man to man, how do you help a man? And then as a woman to a man, how do you help a man? Because those are different. I don't know.
So man to man, and what's interesting, I go back to Job, and when he lost everything, he sat in a pile, and his boys just came and sat. Man to man, sometimes you just need somebody just to sit. You just need somebody to sit there and know that person is there if you need assistance.
That's good.
And so you just sit and you just be there. And when that person, if we talking man to man, when that person says something, you listen. You don't offer advice.
That's good.
You don't offer correction. You just listen. And if we're looking at it from non-man to man, the first thing that I always tell any significant other, any family member, you can't save anyone.
Amen.
That's the one thing that I always say. You can't save anybody. What you can do is go to them and say, whatever you need, I'm here for you. And understand that it may not be spoken in in a very cogent, straightforward way of this is what I need. No, it may be something simple as a brush on the arm, right? To where that person wants you to touch them, but you got to find that you have to connect with that thing, and so you put your hand where their hand is, or you if you just listening and noticing and just say, hey, you good today?
Yeah.
Whether if they say yes, if they say no, okay. And just roll with it. A lot of times the first thing that you have to do is just realize you can't save them.
Yeah.
But you can assist them.
Yeah.
And assisting them is listening, being around them, not discounting them, not assuming anything. That's how you assist.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that has concerned me with the pandemic is this social distancing and the lack of touch.
Yeah.
We were created for community. We created for conversation. We are. We're created for touch, for feeling, for hugs. Unlike other animals, I mean, we are a species that is made for community in a different
100%.
kind of way. And one of the things I appreciate that you share, but I want to kind of connect it to something you said earlier, is how do we teach healthy touch? Yeah. All touch does not need to be sexual. If a man puts his hand on a man or on his back, it might be perceived as a pass, and it's not. And if there are men who are watching who identify as gay, this is a safe space for you. We want to say that up front. But I do want to connect that you talked about earlier, right? That like all intimacy is not sexual, right? So I wonder if you think that touch, healthy, safe touch that respects boundaries, is a way to take the edge off for communicating.
Right.
Can I get a little feedback?
Yeah. So let's take it first from a coupleship standpoint.
Yeah.
When we look at it from a coupleship or a relationship standpoint, touch and intimacy, that's something, once again, we have to go back and use terms. Hey, how do you like, in dating, how do you like to be touched? What is it that you like? That's far as the coupleship. Now let's look. Now that takes an individual to communicate that, right? Because a fair amount of individuals, or how they were brought up, touch may mean trauma, touch may mean misunderstanding, touch may mean a whole lot of things. Yeah. And so we need to make sure that we communicate what touch means, physical touch means. So that's one. That's in a coupleship. Okay. Now let's talk about friendships. And I'm gonna come back to the middle. Let's talk about friendship. Once again, friendship touching. I have a best friend named Walter. I call him G. Okay. When we dap each other up, I kiss him on the neck. Yeah. I kiss him on the neck out of love, because over the years of my lifetime, I learned how to love men. Come on. Not from a love in a way that is romantic love, but friendship love. I learned how to love men. And for him specifically, I learned how to love him. That's good. And so the way that I learned that was just through allowing myself to talk, allowing myself to be vulnerable around G. I've been knowing G since we was in the 7th grade. Yeah. He had a life that I didn't have, and I initially was jealous, but I got over that. And so when we're working with friends, or even, and now I'm going from male parent to male and or female child, get into the habit of kissing your son. Get into the habit of hugging your son. Get into the habit of allowing your son to touch you. That's good. Because in most cases, I'm gonna be perfectly candid. Yeah. The reason why individuals may not touch is a misunderstanding of this thing called touch, based off of what they were taught, and sexual trauma. Men get raped too. That's right. Men get raped too. That's right. Men just don't get raped by other men. Come on. If you are a 9-year-old and you have a 13-year-old babysitter who's a woman or a female, and that female is touching that male boy, that's rape. That's right. That's right. Fondling, right? So if we look at it from this understanding, and remember, just like your doctor said last week, we are the sum total of our experiences, and the only difference is we have birth temperament, and we have our DNA. Everything else is poured into us like a vessel. And if we're poured into us, that touch, that physical touch is dangerous, is foreign, then that's what's happened. So my son told me, he's like, Dad, I don't want to kiss anymore. All right, so before we go to bed, we got to adapt that we do. That's still physical touch.
That's good.
Right. And my wife has told my son, my middle child, oh, I'm always going to kiss you. Oh, you
get over it.
Right. You just like, oh, get over it. And I said, you know what? You don't want that. All right. But we're going to do something. I hug him. I kiss him. My oldest son, I still kiss him on the forehead. I stopped kissing him on the lips probably when he was like 9.
Yeah.
Because he was like, oh, this is okay.
Okay.
But I still touch him.
Yeah.
I still hold him. Right.
But the beauty even of what I'm hearing here is your children feeling comfortable advocating their boundaries, which is healthy, right?
Exactly.
Like, hey, I'm not there anymore, right? But you said something that I really appreciated and has been echoed in so many conversations, not necessarily here, but just kind of in this season. We do this whole the golden rule, right? Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Right.
And what we're starting to hear now is no, don't treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat people the way they want to be treated. Right. And I heard you say like, hey, I had to learn to love G in a way that worked for G and worked for you.
Yeah.
Talk about you.
Yeah. I mean, we're taught that golden rule, treat them to others as you would. Yeah. And that's okay to a certain point. Right. Because what that does is
that's great for strangers.
Right.
Right. Relationship, it's different.
Yeah. When we're in a relationship, we got to ask questions. Hey, did you like that? Or did that work for you? Did that not work for you? We have to feel comfortable, but it goes back to that thing that I said. We have to be okay with communication. And we have to be okay with being wrong about our communication. In other words, hey man, you know what? I'm sorry I did that. That's on me. We have to be accountable for our ability to learn somebody else. We have to be okay with learning somebody else.
Yeah.
That's our part of our accountability. Now, the strange part about it is we can't learn somebody else if we don't learn ourselves first.
Come through here.
And so we have to be okay with learning we have to be wrong amongst ourselves first. Yeah. And I didn't get here. I mean, I'm 45. I didn't get here, when I was born, I was wrong. I've been wrong a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm wrong a lot. And I had to learn how to be accountable for my wrong. And I'm still doing wrong probably. And I know I am. Yeah. And I have to be accountable for my wrong. Now, that's me first. That's that part. If I have grace with me, I have to have grace with you. That means I have to be okay with also being wrong about you and communicating that wrong. Yeah. So a lot of times you just got to communicate and talk. But that goes back because you can't assume.
Yeah.
You can't judge.
Yeah.
Can't critique. Now, my friends that I'm on the text message, they probably say that I do, and I'm pretty sure that they do. And I often apologize for doing that. You know what? My fault. That was on me. That's my fault. So we're all working clay. The idea is, yes, treat yourself well, learn yourself well, and be okay with being wrong about somebody else and inquiring about that wrong. In other words, when I hugged or kissed or did this, I provided my child the opportunity to say no. And we as parents have to be okay with our kids saying no. Yeah. Because if they can't say no or not allowed to say no to us about certain things, they go into the world and something happened and they don't come to us.
Yeah.
So if we have to be okay with them being okay with not okay. I'm sorry. We have to be okay with them being not okay with something that we did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. My son, and I'm just going to be transparent. My son has said, you know what? Them spankings you gave me, my 11-year-old, they really affected me. And I heard him. Yeah. And I explained what spankings are, what discipline is, and this and that. But that never happened with me.
Yeah.
Them cracks upside the heads I had with moms. I ain't get no explanation.
Come on, man.
But I understood that it was needed for him.
Yeah. That's good. So even as you talk about that, as men are searching for healing and for wholeness, what do you think is some of the most difficult hurdles that have to be overcome as a part of that process?
That you don't know everything.
Yeah.
That just because you're a male doesn't mean you're the head of the household. You're the co-head of a household, but it doesn't mean that you're the head of the household. Now, you may or may not be, but you may have to work up to that.
Yeah.
You have to, and the other part about that, right?
Right.
Humility.
Yeah.
That's another part. You have to be okay with being human, and in order to be human, all humans got to have a little bit of humility.
Yeah.
You stumbled. You was wrong.
Yeah.
You got to be okay folding that into that.
Yeah.
And anytime that a male, and I'm just speaking to men, anytime that we're wrong, we get a discomfort feeling, and we go and we act and react in a way that we're taught to react, which is this anger, irritation, all that.
Wow.
And that's how we react. We have to be okay with being wrong. And
Yeah.
you mentioned something earlier about anxiety/depression.
Yeah.
The way that I view it, they're cousins. Because in most cases, if you work with a male, they're anxious about something. The car note, getting that job, doing this, being a proper man. Let's be perfectly honest. We have in the male, since slavery, we had this concept of the mandingo.
Yeah.
I can lay it down.
Yeah.
Everybody laying it down.
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that. So we have anxiety about sexuality and being a proper man. We have anxiety about what does it mean to be a male.
Yeah.
So we have all this. That anxiety, after a while, floods into depression.
Yeah.
And they vacillate on one another back and forth. So they're cousins.
Yeah.
They go back and forth. And so when we're working with men, we also want to understand. And I ask flat out, do you think you're depressed? They be like, oh no, I'm just going through something.
Yeah.
And I bring out the DSM and we go over and I'll go through and I'm like, that sound familiar? They be like, yeah. I'm like, man, you depressed.
Yeah.
And just watching that hammer hit them. And I've had men cry. Yeah. When I literally said, man, you depressed. Because the very first thing they think about is weakness.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm weak.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to keep jumping in, but we do have some questions.
Oh, it's all good. It's cool.
No, not jumping in on this. Like,
okay.
Let's go into the conversation we're having, but I want to bring in. I saw some questions here. Let me see if I can throw them in. If you all have questions, now would be a good time. Do you think that we have been conditioned that there is good and bad emotion? Is this a part of why we have difficulty with expression? Thank you so much, Corey, for your question.
Yeah, 100%. We are conditioned to believe that there are good or bad emotions. What we're actually saying is that they're socially accepted emotions. No, so what happens is, and I want to be quick. What happens is we view conflict as negative. Conflict is just something that needs to happen. Yeah. And so over time, conflict and emotion has been linked together. Yeah. It means that if I act in a socially unacceptable way, or if I react to a conflict in a way that people don't like, okay, I'm going to be judged a certain way. And so what I teach individuals or work with individuals, there's no such thing as good or bad emotions. There's just positive and negative reactions to emotions. Because what happens is a trigger happens, we have an emotional response, and we react on that emotional response. The idea is you can't control the triggers, you can't even control your emotion, but you can manage the way that you respond. And we work on responding in a positive or negative way.
That's good. A lot of what we've talked about has been situational. I don't know, but I see, shout out to Charles Lewis, one of our folks who's in Phoenix. He says, men, watch your serotonin levels. Yeah. Is there something there that is not necessarily environmental, but chemical in men? Can you, I'm assuming that's what he's talking about.
Right. So let's look at it from a standpoint. Everybody, from a neurological standpoint, we have dopamine, we have serotonin, norepinephrine, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to bore everybody with that part. But we do want to serotonin. I like to call my happy drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have what's called SSRIs. So serotonin selective inhibitor, retake inhibitors. And I'm sorry, and I'm pretty sure somebody like, no. But
good.
just think about it like this. So there are times by which we are, by way of our makeup, is that we have a low level of serotonin. That's just the way that we're born. It's a part of our DNA. It's heritable or anything like that. And so at times our serotonin is low. And so the mechanisms of the way our brain works naturally. Once the serotonin fires in our brain, it's something that just takes it up.
Yeah.
Right? It just takes it up. And so what we have to, and when we have medicine stops it from being taken up and it stays in our system. Now, we also can do that through foods. If you do a search for serotonin enriched foods and the way that you eat, it works there too. Yeah. And the concept is we also can eat better in order to help those serotonin levels. But it's not just men, it's all humans that we have to worry about as it relates to that.
That's good. I love what Calvin said here. Never lie to yourself. Be strong mentally and have Jesus in your life. I want to respond to that, or ask you to respond to that, in not just because without the humility, right? Without the acknowledgement of how we do wrong, we're lying to ourselves. Yeah. How does that prevent the process, or in what ways to getting to a better place of mental health and healing?
So this is the interesting part. In counseling, we work on being honest to ourselves. In other words, we very rarely lie to ourselves. We suppress the honesty within ourselves. And that suppression comes out or manifests in ways of headaches, backaches, stomach aches, low testosterone, poor sex drive, low energy, things of that nature. So what happens is, because we are with us 100%, we suppress the honesty about our actions and to ourselves. And what happens is we begin to act in different ways. So when David slept with Bathsheba, and he went and he called the husband, he sent the husband out, and because she got pregnant, and went to go get him killed, put him on the front lines, and he got killed, right? David knew he did wrong. Come on now. David knew he was wrong.
He knew.
But David did things in order to assuage himself, because if he came back and they was like, oh, you pregnant, but I was out here, what happened? And it gets back to David, and then he has to be honest. And so what David did was suppress his honesty, and it came out in other ways, and he did actions, and he had depression. So in other words, in us today, we very rarely, we suppress our honesty, and by suppressing our honesty, our bodies will always betray us. Headaches, backaches, stomach aches, sexual dysfunction, falling into depression. That's what happens. And so what we work on is being more honest with ourselves in practicing this little room, so that you can practice being honest out there in the world. Wow. So that's how that works.
That's good. That's good. It's so funny because I tell people, like, I'm a terrible liar. I just err on the side of truth. I have ever since I was a kid, had a conscience. Maybe it's because I'm in ministry. Like, just tell the truth, because my mom always said, you tell one lie, you got to tell two. And David's story is what happens. Come on here. Let's take it back here. You shall know the truth. And it's the truth that sets us free, right? Yeah. And so a lot of that is not seeing our truth as weakness, but our truth as the door to our freedom. Ooh, somebody put that on the t-shirt.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank Eric so much. Eric, this has just been phenomenal tonight. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
And I'm so thankful to everyone who tuned in, but particularly to our men who were tuned in tonight, asking questions, being engaged. And I just want to lift up even what Charles Lewis put earlier in the chat, which is, as young men, we model what we see. So if my daddy didn't go to the doctor, then I'm not going to the doctor. And if my daddy didn't go to counseling, I'm not going. But there comes a point, and I've just learned this as a parent in particular, where you must be committed. Here it is, to be the chain breaker in your family's history of whatever it might be.
Right.
Because if you don't do it, then you just pass it off to your children.
Right.
And that path to healing, that path to wholeness is in fact available. Eric, I've thrown up your IG. I've thrown up your email address if folks want to reach out to you. Is there anything else you want to share tonight, either from our questions or something you wanted to share, or about your practice or anything? We just want to do that as an opportunity.
A lot of times I like to leave on be kind to yourself.
Amen.
Recognize that you are human. Recognize that you're supposed to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you did.
Amen.
Be kind to yourself in a way that promotes positive self-worth, that promotes positive growth within you. That's the other part. And another thing is understand that we are a communal people. We are a group people, and we need other people. But we also need healthy people around us in order for us to be better, to get better.
Yeah.
If I don't have my wife to tell me, truth, if I don't have my friends to tell me truth,
come on,
then I don't get better. But I also have to look within me and say, I have to be open to that truth.
Yeah.
And so be kind to yourself and know that you're supposed to make mistakes. And if you ain't making mistakes, that's on you.
Come on.
Right. If you're not seeing your mistakes, it's on you. That's not on somebody else.
Yeah.
So be kind to yourself.
Amen.
That's what I like to, know. You can reach me on at Talk to E King. You see all my books. Another good book that I'm working on right now is The Unapologetically Guide to Black Mental Health.
Okay.
I just ended with I got Grandma's Hands. I'm terrible with authors. So Grandma's Hands is one. Yeah. Black Pain is another one. So you can you go to my IG page.
Okay.
And you get all my books, not my books personally. I haven't written a book, but you
go to the, I feel it in my spirit. I feel it in my spirit. Go ahead.
But you go to the books, you read them. I do a lot of reading, and just move forward on that. Just be kind to yourself.
Amen. Amen. I received that. We want to leave you with that tonight. Very, very quickly, I'm going to leave up Eric's IG if you want to follow or reach out. I want to give you a few quick announcements, so just hang with us for just 2 more minutes. We want to remind all of our parents that we are returning to Sunday youth worship experiences virtually, of course, beginning Sunday, September the 13th. We remind you there are 4 groups for our young people. Links is kindergarten to 1st grade. Bridges is 2nd and 3rd grade. Fusion is 4th to 6th grade. And Elevation Teens is 7th to 12th. There are 4 meeting times on Sundays for those young people to gather together. And then the midweek gathering will resume in October. Again, if you're interested in registering your child, you must register. This is for the safety of your child. We cannot open it up to Facebook Live or anything of that nature for the safety and protection of your child. Please make sure that you send an email to youth@southeucliducc.org, and we will contact you and give you the link so that you might register. All we need is your child's name and their grade level. Please be mindful that we have split our wiggling worshipers and our bridges into 2 groups because we have so many young people. So again, we just want to offer that to you. The Beacon newsletter is looking for writers. And if you are interested, shoot an email to beacon@southeucliducc.org. If you like writing, you like proofreading, you like keeping folks in the know, we want you indeed to be a part of that. Also, just want to remind you, we are continuing to look for online facilitators, and online technical support. Online facilitators are like greeters or ushers. You greet people when they come in, check in with them from where they've come from, and help us to move through services or experiences like this. And our online technical support is really not a technical job. You just listen for the audio quality and the visual quality of any experience that we release to you. And yeah, that's it. So look, I want to just tell you really quickly, Sunday is coming up. We are continuing our sermon series, Juggle the Struggle, Thriving in the Age of Anxiety. This week's sermon, if you notice, every sermon each week has been a this versus that. This week's sermon is follow versus unfollow. We want to deal with the reality that sometimes we are following people who contribute to our anxiety We are following podcasts. We are following social media. We are following news, and we are feeding our spirit in a way. And sometimes we need to unfollow those things and follow what gives us peace and gives us joy. You will be so surprised by how Sunday's sermon is about to go down. We did something creative. We did something different. I'm not telling you fully what it is. You're going to have to tune in. And I want you to tune in on Sunday because you're going to receive information that we are planning a drive-up worship service. And so to get the information, you need to watch on Sunday. I'm not going to give it to you here because it's a holiday weekend. I want you to worship with South Euclid United Church of Christ. You have no commute but to your couch this weekend. So we want you to be with us. We want you to worship with us. We have 2 more sermons in the Juggle the Struggle series. We have 1 more session of Echo. Next Thursday night, it's our last session. We'll be with Dr. Tiffany Dent. We're going to talk about mental health of women and girls. And so that'll be our last Echo in this series. And then our hope is that you will have already enrolled in Encore. Encore is just like what we're doing here, but in small groups. Encore is the follow-up to Sunday's sermon where you get in small groups online, same group, to discuss the topics that are at hand. Look, there's never a dull moment at South Euclid United Church of Christ. We are staying on our toes, but let me tell y'all something. It's a holiday weekend. I'm tired. Eric want to get home to his family. We love you. Peace out. We'll see you next time. We'll see you on Sunday. Be blessed. Thanks again.
All right.